Welcome to Creators Conversations here at CISAC. CISAC being the International Confederation of Societies of Authors and Composers, the world's leading network of authors' societies. We're here to protect the rights and promote the interests of our creators worldwide within the repertoires of music, audiovisual, drama, literature, and visual arts. My name is Anna Neal, and as well as being the Director of Creators and Presidents at CISAC, I'm also a songwriter, composer, engineer, and producer myself with an academic interest in song. I'm thrilled to be here today to speak to three songwriters who have found themselves working in the world of K-pop. So I'd like to introduce to you James Reynolds, Max Graham, and Matt Thompson, who collectively have written for artists such as BTS, La Seraphine, Paloma Faith, Calvin Harris, amongst many others. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
Now, we are due to go to Seoul for our General Assembly, so I'm thrilled to come and talk to you about K-pop. So let's start with a quick snapshot of your rise to success. What are three people from London doing writing K-pop songs?
I mean, for us, you're looking at him right here, Mr. James Reynolds. He was the one that really brought us into the fold, and he's been at it a lot longer than us. So
Wow.
I'll let you have a.
Yeah, it's an interesting story actually because so K-pop, for those who don't know, has always had a tradition of doing everything in-house. So it's a bit like the old Stock Aitken and Waterman model where it's sort of written, mixed, produced, everything is done sort of by a team that's in one place. Xenomania was another sort of example of this. And going for many years, obviously before we were involved, but you know, very much localized to Korea. And then it took the kind of one guy who decided to break the mold, who over the years has become a friend of mine called Mr. Bang, who had this idea to take stuff out of Korea and try, you know, a bit of Western influence on some of the K-pop records. And he reached out to me, must have been about 15 years ago. No, not quite.
11, 12.
But
Yeah,
12 years ago. And I had mixed a record for a singer called Talisa that became a #1 record over here called We Are Young. And he loved the sound of it, so he kind of said, I want to try this guy to mix a record. And he just got together with a producer he worked with called P-Dog and formed this band who at the time, well, were a little known band called BTS at the time, but that no one had ever heard of. Reached out to me and then my management and said, look, would you mix a record? Love what you did with Talisa. And then that was that. And then I started mixing their records thereon after, really. And it was incredible, actually, over the sort of, even within 3-4 years, to see their meteoric rise, their attention to detail. They went to a whole new level with their videos, you know, for their shoots were incredible. I mean, God knows how they, you know, the budgets must have been huge for those. But, you know, I kind of started looking 3 or 4 years later at some of the records I'd mixed on YouTube and seeing, you know, hundreds of millions of streams. I was like, holy moly, I wasn't expecting that. And then I was working, Matty was working in a studio next door to me here, as was Max on some other projects. Max worked with me for a while as well. Both incredibly talented writers and producers.
Thank you.
And it just occurred to me that they should actually just work together. So I suggested that they did work together, and they did work together, and it's worked really well. How many times can I get worked in one sentence? But
it worked.
It worked really well. And then I sort of took on the kind of role of trying to help them get a foot in the door. I mean, only on a very loose basis, because I would never claim to be a manager, but I'm a friend and wanted to try and help out. And then an opportunity came up through Big Hit, which was Mr. Bang's label, to write some new material for BTS. And by this stage, they were a big act. And I got on the hotline to the boys and said, okay, I know it's the weekend.
It was also Christmas.
It was also Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
But cancel your plans because here is your opportunity. And I said, go in and write as many songs, just phone as many top liners as you know, and let's just get busy and see what we can do. And in fair play to them, they absolutely, switched their phones off apart from getting in touch with the people they needed to, and then got very busy in the studio and submitted a whole bunch of songs over to Big Hit, and had the good fortune of having quite a few of the songs they wrote taken, and the rest is history, really. That was their break, and in fact, to the point where one of their songs called Microcosmos became the sort of stadium tour anthem that they'd closed their shows with. So
that was a great moment.
It was a great moment, wasn't it?
Yeah,
seeing that
played around the world in front of these stadiums full of people. That was like mind blowing.
Yeah. So that's it. That's the very sort of long version of how they got into K-pop, and I got into K-pop.
But it is, I was saying, we were having conversations earlier, and I was saying, K-pop is the gig that every songwriter wants, because every songwriter thinks the money's there. And we'll come to royalties and we'll come to talking about the earnings from it in a minute. But, why is K-pop such a huge success? Is it the new Tin Pan Alley, as you say, the new Xenomania? Why is it so big?
I think that one of the things is that there's so many opportunities, because obviously there's so many different territories where songwriting is closed off. It's either the artist writes it themselves or the artist writes it with a team, but it's a team that they sort of signed with and they keep it all within that. And I think that's the thing with Korean music, is that there's so much diversity in it. So everybody's got something that they'll enjoy making. It's not just one sound going, right, I've got to learn how to make this. If you're an acoustic artist, singer, songwriter, EDM, trap, hip hop, whatever, there's going to be something for you. And there's always going to be opportunities to jump on a track and get the song taken. And I think that that's really appealing to people, especially songwriters, who sometimes feel like they're hitting their head against a brick wall.
It is definitely the opportunities that are open. I feel like it's the only industry really where, like for us, we hadn't had any success really with releasing songs we'd written with any labels in the UK. And no one was interested. It's a very closed door thing. You need to be in sort of with someone who's the artist from the ground up to make it work. But we got our foot in the door with a massive act like BTS. And that just doesn't really happen in any other industry, but they gave us the opportunity and it worked.
To add to that, I think in the UK, there's only a handful of artists that are really going to make that writer some money back.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really long odds. I think your odds are stacked better in Korean music because they have a lot of big streaming artists,
and it's the physical sales.
Really, and it's the physical sales,
hugely important.
So you're reducing your odds massively. And when we spoke about it after you moved on and had these BTS hits, we all sort of said, and you were obviously going off and getting new management and publishing, that the reality is, like you said, you had such a huge inroad into K-pop that you had to expand on that and focus on that market.
Yeah. For us, it was just about taking what was working and just keeping going at it, because I think you have to try so many different things, and then when something sticks, it's like you'd be stupid to just ignore it. So, for us, we just went full steam ahead with the K-pop thing, and
we had tried a lot of different things.
Yeah,
as well. We were DJs at one point. I mean, we were doing
remixes.
One gig. Yeah, one gig. It did not go well.
That still counts.
Our controller cut out on the first drop of the first song. It was like DJ's worst nightmare, first gig, but it was kind of hilarious at the same time.
Yeah. But we'd spent weeks on weeks on weeks getting the set prepared. Yeah. And then we ended up playing to about 6 people and their parents in Cornwall.
Oh, I know that feeling. I've done gigs to 10,000 people and one man and a dog. Yeah. It's quite a shift. So it's interesting you bring up that point. If we as songwriters spend a lot of time, doing a lot of artist development, working with artists and working with them in the studio. So it's really interesting to hear the story of how it works within K-pop. Do you find that there's do you have any issues with a cultural or a language gap or a barrier there?
I mean, I guess the most obvious one is that none of us can speak Korean. I mean, it's not even fluent. It's not a
Speak
case
for yourself.
But how do you manage that in the creative process? Do you find that difficult in the creative process?
No, because when we're doing the sort of, from our side, we'll always write a song in English, and sometimes that will spark an idea if one of the labels want to take something that we've done, then they will use that as the kind of springboard to other ideas, and they might keep a phrase or they might keep a chorus, or you know, and I think that's part of like the actual K-pop sound is that mix and blend of the English and Korean language.
But am I right in thinking that a translator takes publishing?
Well, I mean, it's not really translator because they rewrite the songs. So, you know,
Right.
Yeah,
the song,
the meaning normally changes.
yeah.
Right.
Even if they keep the same words, that was like in the original demo, maybe 1 word, 2 word, but it's the real hook, you know. They'll still rewrite everything else around it. So yeah, you expect that someone will come on board and sort of be adding a whole new element to the song. You know, that's one thing about K-pop is very rarely you'll write a song and it'll get taken in its entirety without being touched, you know. But at the same time, it's like, would you rather have a piece of 10 songs where you've got a smaller piece because there's so many people involved, or do you want one song and then never get heard of again? So I think for us, we just like the fact that there's loads of opportunities, and sometimes it means, you know, we get to write a huge part of it, and then sometimes we'll write a small part. And that's the same with every person that's doing K-pop at the moment, really. Maybe bar a few.
There's usually a big team of writers involved.
Yeah.
It's fascinating from a mixing perspective, actually, because when I started doing it, I didn't understand a word they were singing about. And I still don't. But what that makes you do is focus on the melody. So actually, it's quite a good thing because you're kind of listening out for the melodies that really should stand out in the song.
Yeah.
Making you a better writer.
Well, I don't know, but
yeah, you got to focus on that. I mean, one thing that they always do when there's a release is there'll be like because they just know they have an international audience. So it might not even just be English-speaking people. It might be German-speaking people or Spanish-speaking people or whatever.
Talking about the lyric videos.
But the lyric videos, there will always be, you know, the Korean, and then under it, kind of like when you used to have those sing-along, like Disney videos and stuff, and they would show the lyrics and, you know, kind of almost karaoke.
The phonetic Korean as well, so you can kind of
learn how to say the words as well properly, you know. Which is it's kind of cool, but also it gives writers a chance to go back and see what the song's actually all about now. Because
we've had that a few times.
Quite often it will get changed, but 9 times out of 10, I think it changes for the better. Because some of the ideas that the guys come up with over there is, you know, very grandiose. You know, you could be writing in a kind of small town kind of like the vibe of, you know, things that you would just do,
kind of lyric,
things that you would do in your day-to-day life, and all of a sudden the song comes out and it's about the moon and the stars and the universe, and so, you know, sometimes it can take quite a drastic turn, but I personally have always thought for us it's always been for the better. So
that's really interesting. So you mentioned, you know, there's a lot of people involved in this process. You know, how do you manage the complexities of copyright across all these different regions with all these different writers and management and producers?
Good lawyers.
Good lawyers.
Fortunately, I would sort of say that the Korean labels are very on top of it when it comes to distributing publishing percentages. They often email us saying, okay, you've written this section of this song, and they'll give timestamps of how many bars of music we've written, or if we've done a top line, like how many bars of top line we've added to the song.
I'll just sit there going, what?
I know.
Give me their number. Yeah.
They are amazingly efficient
Yeah.
on every level. I mean, there is no one like the Koreans there possibly is. It might be the same in C-pop and J-pop, but my experience of working with Korean people is from a production and mix and publishing point, it's all very precise and makes the job very easy because it's all so clear.
Yeah.
You know, I will get half a decibel tweaks, which no one would probably hear, but they'll come back and could you turn the guitar at 2 minutes down by 0.5 of a dB?
Yeah.
And that's, but it makes it a delight to work with because there's no grey areas. It's very
clear.
So you know what your splits are, you know what you're getting of the song, you know approximately like what your royalties are going to be. You've already got that information there.
It's all cleared up very efficiently.
And also, quite often, the labels are quite reluctant to actually move forward without making sure that everything has been signed, and you know, it's very much like a priority.
Yeah,
and
it feels very fairly done. I mean, we've had instances where other producers, like Korean producers who we've worked with on the song, have said, "Oh, actually, we feel like Arcades deserve an extra couple of % here and there." And so you'd never get that. People being that generous, being like, oh, you take some of my percentage just because I think that you deserve it. You know, that's unheard of.
Yeah, I literally had that the other day with P-Dog.
Yeah.
And some splits, which was nice.
I can see why everyone wants the gig now.
Yeah, it is the thing is, I always feel it's very cards around the table. You know what you're getting into. And I feel like, the music industry, you hear all these horror stories and you hear about people getting screwed over here and screwed over there. And I think it's because, that's down to secrecy. It's down to people trying to do things behind others' back. And I think one thing that we found, certainly with K-pop and writing with the Koreans, is that everything's very much, it's there, it's on the table for everyone to see, whether it's written down, whether it's, conversations, whatever. It's very much, what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
What are your main revenue streams that are generated by K-pop?
I have to you guys, really.
Yeah.
Well, obviously there's streaming revenue, but I would say that it does become very difficult to work out where your revenue exactly comes from, because it's being collected through various societies around the world, then your own publisher, and then a sub-publisher, then your publisher. And, it goes through so many sets of hands. It's hard sometimes to follow the trail. But there, obviously, streaming revenue, the sales revenue is, I guess, the biggest attraction for K-pop versus other markets, because so many physical copies are sold. Yeah, I mean, like we've written on albums that how many have we sold so far?
Not
we sold, but
but we've been on albums that have sold over 27 million now.
Yeah.
And again, that's just crazy numbers compared to, and James, you'll be even more. Like, that's crazy numbers.
10 billion.
What is 27 million? 10 billion. Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if Lady Gaga writes an album, she's written the whole album and it's her album and she's singing every song, and she's, when you're working with the K-pop market, you've got a piece of one song, a piece of two.
Yeah.
So there's a whole load of people. So it is a slightly different, if the Beatles had sold 27 million albums, it would just be them. BTS, they've sold 27 million, well, they've sold way more, but that's their album. So we are, we've got maybe one or two songs which have been on albums that have sold
But you did
that many.
pretty well, didn't you? Because they toured the album that you wrote on, and that was a worldwide stadium tour. So that probably is a pretty good
and
revenue
then they were
generator.
supposed to do the album after as well, but then COVID happened. So that was obviously quite a big loss.
But
when it comes to revenue.
Like you say, I was trying to do the same as you and sort of find my way back through where are the live stadium performances?
Yeah.
Which part of the revenue is that? And it's quite hard to.
It's very hard.
It's so broken up.
To
like UK stadium performances, we got paid the next PRS royalty period. But the rest of the world, because there was like I don't know how many date tour, but like, two nights in different stadiums around the world, it's really hard to follow where that money has gone. Then it's also impossible to see exactly, I would assume that songs we've written are being played on radio stations in Korea and played in public spaces where they pay a Conquer license, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very hard to follow that trail as well. And then you've got your PPL performances as well, and that's its own sort of
little thing
mess in your mind.
But the points as a music producer are lower, aren't they, than you'd get?
Oh, then zero.
We don't get points.
Zero. You see, this is probably the one drawback. So, like, if I was asked by a young mix engineer, should I mix K-pop? I'd say absolutely. It's a pleasure to do, but bear in mind, like, I don't get points on the records I mix for bands. If I'd had points,
we don't get points as producers.
If I'd had points on the K-pop records I'd mixed, I would, I'd be in a very different position.
Can you just explain what you mean by points?
Do you want to do that?
I think it's the master royalty, right? So for the physical, because I guess back in the day it'd be physical copy, right? So there'd be a cost involved in doing that. So then when the record label put up that cost, they'll want that cost back. So that was always kept separate. So that's my
you get 1
understanding of
point.
it.
So for example, as a mix engineer, you get one or 2 points depending on whether I do some additional production on a record. And that is 1% of the sales of that record, probably after cost. So after their expenses and paid me and everything, then you start to generate, this passive income, which is so important for all writers and musicians to have those, because that's your pension that you build up over the years, is, the points on a record.
Especially important with physical sales.
Especially important, yeah.
That would be, big money.
Mm.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Korea is a market that relies on physical sales more so than we do in the Western market.
And the weird thing
it's
is,
not so much anymore. It definitely did when I was starting, because they didn't have Spotify in Korea, so it was all about physical. And in their market, they love box sets and these really beautifully created packages that the fans can buy, and they'll buy them, and the markup is like probably in the 80s when you could get box sets over here, probably even more. So yeah, they do very well out of that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they are basically pieces of art by this point. There's so much to them, and that's also a huge contribution, because in the UK you could still buy a physical, but you might buy a CD for $5.99 and those sell 70,000, whereas in Korea they're selling 4 or 5 million, and these are £29 each.
Yeah,
so I mean, it's just £29 each is probably on the higher end. There are cheaper ones, obviously, but certainly, I've seen ones that have come out for like £50-60.
Yeah,
and they'll sell again millions of them.
In fairness, they do higher mix and production fees in reflection of not
buying out the master,
paying a point. It's probably not on the same level by any stretch of the imagination to what a point would be, but it's a token, I suppose. So yeah, they don't just sort of blindly kind of go, well, we're not giving point and we're paying you the same.
I mean, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about everything's on the table. It's not like that's hidden. It's the same for everyone. It's not like somebody will get and somebody won't. And I mean, I'm sure if Max Martin or Ryan Tedder was today, then you might get a slightly different, who knows? We don't know. But at the same time, it is, for everyone that we work with, because obviously now we're in the community, we work with so many people and everybody's the same. And you know about it. So if you don't like it, you don't do it, It's pretty straightforward, I think. And yeah, we love doing it. So
I might need to lie down, because my daughter's given me a massive shopping list for when we go to Seoul of all the CDs that she wants. And now you've told me they're 50, 60 quid.
How old's your daughter?
She's 12.
Just take a big jacket.
She's a massive K-pop fan. And we're finding that a lot of teenagers are listening to K-pop. They're not listening to
massively.
K-pop music. They're listening to K-pop. It's an interesting, for me, culturally, it's an interesting phenomenon, because there's a relevance there that they find in this music, despite the fact they can't understand the lyrics.
Yeah, and my niece, she likes. She's just started to get into K-pop as well, but obviously she doesn't want to do anything that her Uncle Matt's been attached to, because it's not cool.
Really?
So she said she didn't like she said she didn't like BTS. So I said, who do you like? And she said, this was when Cupid was out. She said 50-50. Uncle Matt's worked with them as well.
Oh,
well, I don't like them. I like Blackpink. Oh, right, okay.
I should think you'd be the absolute ultimate of cool, I mean.
Don't work like that.
Right?
So, the money side of things, given the success of BTS, particularly with Stay Alive, that I know that you worked on, you must be rich by now.
I think that if we'd had half the amount, I don't know.
I mean, I think the question is,
we're British.
Talk about your money, right?
Money.
is it from a perspective, if we think about some of the messages that come out, about writers not being able to make a living, it's tough, right? Anybody within the art world is finding it difficult to sustain themselves. Are you able to sustain yourselves?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
because of this income, because of the way that it's organised, because what's coming in.
Yeah, 100%.
We can sustain ourselves. I wouldn't say that
it's not retirement rich. It's
no.
it's a sustainability kind of rich.
Yeah. It gives us a chance to do what we want to do without being worried about doing it.
Yeah,
I think that's something that a lot of songwriters struggle with, is that they say, I love writing, but I just don't have time to do it because I've got this job and that job. And I think that's, really what most songwriters want, is just to be able to do it without having that burden. And I think that's definitely given us that. And, we've been able to move into a nice big studio and get the bits of gear that are going to level us up. And, for us, that's fun. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to spend our money on. So
I think we have a lot of success numerically if you look at the streaming, the sales and everything like that, but it doesn't necessarily translate to being rich, It's sustainable.
Yeah.
For us.
Again, it's the way it's been set up. Like, again, on Spotify, we've had 2.3 2 billion streams.
Yeah.
But if somebody who was their own artist had 2.2 billion streams, they would be in a very different position.
Completely. I
So,
think if we'd had this level of success in the industry, 20, 30 years ago, then we'd be flying. We'd be retired,
I would have got
living on yachts.
I would have got here on time because I would have got my plane.
Yeah.
Oh, bless. You're a musician. You don't have to be here on time. It's fine. So it's very interesting because Bjorn also mentions this whole thing about needing time to create and needing the space to create. And one of the things that I found, and a lot of other writers have found, is that, we don't have time anymore. Everything's so speeded up, which leads me on to my next question nicely. The music world is hugely focused on AI, artificial intelligence at the moment, and some think it's a disaster for creators, some think it's an opportunity. What's your view on that?
In its current state, I think that we're sort of dabbling with using it now and again because in its current state, I guess what we find it useful for is voice replacement. Now, we both top line songs. We both sing not amazingly well. I don't think we have the right tone to sell, especially for K-pop. We don't have very airy, beautiful pop voices.
I won't get you to sing, don't worry.
That's great. Thank you. But, we have tried replacing our voices with, some AI voices. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Still, a bit hit and miss. But that is a useful tool, I would say, for us now. But in terms of composition, that's something we haven't really looked into. It is a bit scary. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I think that you're right. I mean, we're not capitalizing on it. We're not making money with these. We're using those tools to help us get to a place.
Yeah.
So that's, we're not just saying, okay, now that's there, we're gonna, just put out a song tomorrow with Taylor Swift's voice on it, and that's not what we're doing. And I don't know a lot of the rules and stuff still about what you can and can't do, and I don't know what's gonna come back and bite people, but. Yeah, there's that, and then there's also, when you're James is gonna hate this, but when you're mixing,
don't even go there.
But when you're mixing, there's tools now that will help, and I think again,
it's called James Reynolds.
when you're producing a song and it's not been cut yet, you don't know if you're gonna make money from it. You write songs every day, and only a select few of them will get taken every so often, so. You don't want to be spending tons of money on every song. So to try and use something that will help you get it sounding closer to where you want it.
I get that. But because if you're a writer or a producer and you've got let's say an AI compressor that will assess the guitar you've played in and compress it to the right amount immediately, it leaves your brain open to just being more creative being quick. So that's great. And I think I was just thinking about your AI question as well. I've been looking at it a lot, and it's unnerving how quickly it can put a song together, whether you want an Afrobeat song or a pop song or a country song. 30 seconds it'll take to knock out 3 ideas with some lyrical content that you suggest. So if you put in, cliche country road, country and western, it will then, 30 seconds spit out a song with lyrics about country roads and to the point where you can then get the stems and maybe use part of it as a root idea and then develop it and integrate it into your own idea. Or you go, to hell with it. I'm going to sit here and 2 days a week, I'm going to knock out 50 AI songs every day. And then you release 100 songs every month. Within a year, you've got a huge number of songs streaming, even if they're doing a few thousand each. It's giving you a passive income to allow you the freedom to actually be creative and do your music. So, you can berate it and go, it's not good. And there are lots of things that aren't good about it. But I would definitely say, also, use it to your advantage.
It does give me sort of dystopian future vibes.
Yeah.
With the amount of songs being released now, if everyone starts doing that, 50 songs a day released, just upload them all. You're going to be inundated with copy-paste songs.
Well, there are all sorts of, from our side, there are all sorts of copyright implications in there. And that, if you go to register your song on PRS, because we're in the UK, so I'm assuming everyone's PRS, you register it on the system, is the songwriter going to claim the fact that they've written that song 100%? You know, would you credit AI in that song? You know,
can you?
All
Who gets
these
the
questions.
money?
Can you? Who gets the money? And these are all the questions that we're looking at CISAC. Is, you know, how do you make sure people get money from that? You know, and it is a burning question for all creators, and think. And you know, to your point, we do all use assistive AI in the studios. You know, I've used some of these. I won't look at James when I say this, but I know what you're talking about when you're talking about the one that mixes, and it does allow time. And I think that's an important thing to raise, in that, you know, we are having to churn out content at such a high rate that what you say about that passive income is a very valid point that I don't think a lot of people think about. If we think about generative AI now, and you've mentioned that quickly, thinking about the way that K-pop is constructed, you know, variety of different genres, lots of different styles, but it's relatively structured, formatted in a very pop style. Do you think that's going to take over? Is there a potential?
I think it's just opened up a whole new, like, option for people to do. You know, I think people are still going to want to do short, you know, singer-songwriter things, or they want to do big, epic kind of loads of sections, and I think that it's just opened up another possibility.
And there's a magic that you get that you don't get from AI, from interaction with musicians. You know, there is. And like, if I was to get AI to mix a record, it would mix it based on trying to get everything, relatively speaking, to its maximum potential. Now, a lot of bands and creatives and artists don't want that. They want their vocal to be much louder, or the guitar to be much louder. They want to create a sound that is their sound, you know, and that was very much a thing, you know, sort of 80s and 90s, you know, tom fills were, for Phil Collins was his, like, they were louder than anything else on the record. But do you know what I mean? It's like, there isn't an exact science to making a record. It's a creative process. And especially I see it, you know, I have a record label and we make dance music, but in a very different way, with lots of live musicians, and you see these moments happen when people are interacting as musicians, and it's awesome. And AI is nowhere close to kind of recapturing that. But I think part of the issue may be the fact that we all know how massive Spotify has become, but also as writers and people that have had labels and released records, you are aware of the fact that you need to have consistent release patterns to tap into the AI, you know, the algorithm that is now working on Spotify, because they can't have the manpower to manage all this. So it's looking at data like how regularly is it being released. So people are required to produce mass content and keep releasing it. You know, I would say to someone now, you know, stockpile 10 records and then put a rapid release program out, you know, to show that you've got this consistency. So, you know,
we are all playing the algorithm game, trying to fit the requirements of the streaming service. I mean, it was the same with YouTube. I think when they had, I don't remember how long ago this was, but they changed their algorithm so that it was 10-minute videos that were going to be pushed above all else. And then every person on YouTube was releasing 10-minute content. And then it changed to 40-minute content or whatever it was. But we're all going to play the algorithm game until that changes in some way. So whether it's a different streaming service that highlights puts more emphasis on having one release every month or one release every 3 months or whatever it would be, that I think that it won't change until something like that changes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But then, it goes sort of deeper, doesn't it? Because really no one knows what a hit is anymore. You know, they really don't. You know, you can go into a major record label and ask the the person, you know, the head of the label, and I've had this very conversation a few months ago, and they're like, well, I used to be able to confidently say if a record was played, I'd go, that's a hit. Really, that you can't say that anymore, and you just don't know. And so record companies have been sort of scrabbling around trying to figure out how to work artists and records. I had this very conversation with our lovely engineer who's actually recording this today, who's been offered a few record deals, and said, don't get sucked into the process of signing with someone who's going to kill your fun and your creativity and your passion for music. You know, if you're doing well and people are after you, that means you're doing something right. And I was like, maybe you should just keep doing what you're doing and enjoying the process, and not get stuck into a big kind of label model where suddenly you're waiting for this and all the kind of stuff that goes with it that slows you down and sometimes can sort of slightly take the joy out of making records.
Speaking on the other end of that, amen to that.
I mean, for me, I think when we're writing songs, one of the things that's the real teller if it's a song's good or not is you just get that feeling like it's exciting. You want it, like, do you know what I mean? There's a magic about it, and you know that you can feel it. You know it's different from other songs, and 9 times out of 10, those are the songs that end up going on and doing better.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that AI would struggle with being able to pinpoint because it's a feeling. So,
yeah, there's a lot of fear around technology, isn't there? And I think, I'm very cautious on this. I guess the worry is that when you say no one knows what a hit is, we don't know what AI is ingesting. And I think that's the greatest fear, is that as a lot of people like what they've heard before. This comes out of my research, and I guess the worry is that in this market where we're all struggling to make a living, one more thing.
I mean,
one more thing. And I'm very keen on this, empowering people through the use of technology. But I guess that's the big...
I think the best analogy for me would be, if you're watching somebody on stage and as this big voice comes out, everybody gets goosebumps. Is AI going to get goosebumps? Is they going to be able to feel what everybody else feels at that moment?
If I was just to take an average 15-year-old, i.e. my daughter, she's really got bored of TikTok records, and she's when I go into a room, that she's got the Smiths playing or the Cure or some band like that.
Good girl.
and actually her favourite artist at the moment is a guy called Noah Khan, who I think is brilliant and is just a great songwriter, which gives us hope that actually, a great song will always prevail. Yeah. And I think even for those artists out there that are making amazing songs and getting no traction, they can be happy and secure in the knowledge that they have made a wonderful, beautifully constructed song that will stand the test of time. That's why obviously ABBA have stood the test of time, because they wrote amazing songs. And I think great songs will prevail, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of scary when Splice is developing at a rate where now they have the new, again, AI-based one that says, why don't you use this drum loop? So you put it in, and then it goes, do you know what would go well with that drum loop? This bass loop. Have you thought about trying this vocal loop? You're just clicking OK, and then you've got a song. It's like, wow, okay.
But do you remember when we first started working together, you went and did a writing session, a writing camp, and there were about 5 or 6 rooms, and you came back quite deflated, because you said,
really deflated, yeah.
Because you guys usually sit down with a piano or a guitar and you knock up a song properly. And you said that you were walking through every room with someone on Splice on a computer looking for a loop or a guitar or something. And it was just such a sort of deflating writing experience.
That was definitely, at a stage where it was just a case of throwing loops and stuff together. I think people have got quite good at being able to take a loop and, making it their own. And I guess that comes back to that whole idea of using AI to your advantage, but not exploiting AI. But yeah, personally, I came from a band background where everything was done with guitars, and you would even tap out your drums rather than program them. So that's still the way that I like to do things. And
thinking about your work you're doing within this K-pop market, and the music industry in general, what are the challenges that you see? Other challenges that you see coming your way as writers in terms of your ability to make a living?
I think just the fact that there's so many people doing it now, that the competition's higher than it ever has been.
Yeah. Definitely that's definitely true.
Like you said right at the beginning, it's suddenly, it's got mass popularity within songwriters.
Yeah,
everybody wants to go, and whenever you're chatting to somebody, what you're up to, you go back 4 or 5 years ago, they go, I just come back from LA, but everyone's just back from Seoul now. Like everyone, they're either just back from Seoul or they're just going to Seoul.
Because they realise that that's one of the only markets that makes money.
Yeah.
When you write a record.
Just what you do in business, you go where the work is.
You adapt, yeah.
But yeah.
So our audience is mainly going to be CMOs from around the world, so collection management organisations, so PRS, SASM, Conca, ASCAP. If I haven't mentioned you, there's a long list, 225, I think.
Wow, who knew?
Who knew? No, exactly. So we've got a big global community around the world. They're trying to do their best to make sure that you guys get money coming in, particularly with metadata issues and all of these kind of things. Do you have any advice? What advice do you have for our collection management organisations?
I guess there's the don't want to just highlight issues here, but it's kind of, you can kind of track where your money's coming from, at least through PRS. You can, get your pie charts and see which territories and, whether it came through online or broadcast or whatever. But that to track where the missing money is, the expected income, which is just a complete unknown, is very difficult. Like you only know what you're being paid, but you don't know what you're not being paid. And I'm sure that there's a lot that you're not being paid. So, but it's very hard to decipher what that is, or what the expected value is versus what you receive, and whether or not that is going to come in over a longer period of time. That's a very unclear.
Do you mean like a chart that should show you, well, if you're being played in this stadium, you get this, just one sort of table that would give you a clear indication of the type of money you should be receiving?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's not
because they've
really
got one like that for royalties, haven't they, now, where you can put in streams and it will kick out exactly what you should get on what percentage you're on.
Yeah.
But if you had a chart that monitored like live, radio, and all of those things, and you could sort of put in figures and it would check out
projected value versus what you're receiving.
Yeah, that could be quite useful actually. So some kind of resource that allows you to understand how much money you should be getting, because I do know it's quite difficult, particularly when you're working with publishers as well, to keep an eye on that income that's coming in and understand where it's coming and understand what the value of everything is as well. I mean, I've looked at many statements and cried, and gone, okay, I know it's not
sheer joy, tears of joy.
No, unfortunately. Well, 10 years ago, yes. 10 years ago, it was tears of joy, but now, I mean, it's tears of really. And, it's not the fault of the CMOs. It's simply the way the market is. What about you, Matt?
It's just such a big unanswered question. I mean, I think that's the thing. Like you never know what you're gonna get. You sometimes get it, you don't really understand what it means, and I think I don't really.
I mean, they've tried to make it clear through the PRS app and everything like that, and it is good, but it is the entire world that your money is coming in from every country through every possible source.
There were a whole bunch of big records that I'd mixed for mainstream artists that the contracts were never finished, and I didn't have that point on that record. And I was thinking, it's odd. How can this guy have 200 million streams and I've never had any sort of ancillary income from it? And it's almost a full-time role if you were just to kind of go through, make sure you've got your points sorted on every record and your PPL's registered. And I mean, I guess that's what management companies are for, but even they don't sometimes have the resources and the bandwidth to do all of that and then go and do the meetings and everything else that they do.
Yeah.
It's an awful lot. I mean, you have to be a 360 entrepreneur now as a writer in any repertoire.
100%.
Yeah.
And, I do understand that when you're trying to be inspired and be creative and write something about the next big K-pop hit for BTS, to then have to think about the money side of things is huge. And there are lots of different avenues to come in. Just thinking about, up and coming writers, any advice for them in keeping the faith, keeping.
Come on, be a bit positive,
faith.
guys.
Be positive. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is,
but you don't have to be positive. You can be a realist. I'm all for realism.
No, I mean, there is so much music out there and stuff, and I think that everybody can really have a crack at it. I think that's one of the beauties of the tools that we have now. Because one of my friends said to me the other day, do you know what? I've got a bucket list thing that I want to do. I said, what is it? He went, write a song. You're going to help me. I went, why don't you just learn the tools that are available to because your first song is never your best song.
Yeah.
No.
So I said to him, and literally I've come back 2 weeks later, he's written a bunch of songs, he's buzzing, this is his life now. He wants to do music, he's loving it, and I think that's, the beauty of it is, for people who, I know you're talking about songwriters who are already going, but I think there's there's opportunities for people who just thought about it, maybe, it'd be really nice to I think that's something that's really exciting, is that those opportunities are there for everyone now. You can, from your bedroom, you can do.
And so many people are doing it and succeeding from their bedroom. That's really encouraging for any musician coming into it. It doesn't even have to be a complex idea. I think there are important things to understand and be smart about how you release, understand how Spotify works. Understand that, if you're doing it independently, you get a good sort of maybe distribution deal with someone,
And I think as well, it always feels really cliche to say stick at it, and eventually it will
Perseverance
come,
is
but
so key, though.
perseverance
Yeah.
is, but also I think for us, looking at it from a personal sort of way, like Max touched on earlier, we tried so many things, and almost every one of those things didn't work because we were copying other people. And we were just, and you do it and you think because you've done it, it's better than everybody else's. But the reality is it's not. It's just another one of millions. So I think, for us, finding that K-pop thing right at that time just worked for us. And that's because it worked. That's what we're going for. But I think, you find what works for you, whether it is the K-pop thing, whether it's, house music, whatever. But it could also be making music for video games. It could be sync for adverts and TV, or making music for, it could be anything.
Yeah.
So, I think if you want something to work for you, you have to kind of put the ego aside and then go, right, I'm just going to do what's going to work. I'll throw a load of ideas at different places and see which one connects. And then, if it looks like that's going to be a really good income stream and it's going to be able to give me a full-time job in music, then I'll go down it. And I can still do wee bits here and there on the side. But, and maybe what you connect with is a number one hit that's all around the world, You never know.
But
Says the man
also
who's had one.
anything's possible, isn't it? It's like, another person I know who's quite young just makes chill out music, but just literally pads, very sort of gentle pads. And he's making more money than probably all of us put together with all his meditation music.
Yeah.
I'm doing the wrong thing. But it's interesting to hear, because I think a lot of the narrative we hear is quite negative. Right? There's we are having to diversify in our jobs. We're having to take on lots of different roles, simply because there's so much music and it's in every repertoire. Everyone can do it. And it is one of the things, making sure your registrations are correct with your CMO to make sure you get the money, trying to keep an eye on your songs to make sure that you've not got 7 different registrations of the same song. These are all challenges that are in the marketplace. But do you find the business customs are different? When you're going over there to work with the artists?
Oh, they're just really nice.
They're just really nice.
So sweet.
They're just
But
lovely people.
That's great, yeah.
Respectful for songwriters, they take care of you a bit more.
They
I
are
guess.
really
Yeah,
lovely.
they care.
As a culture, they're lovely. They're lovely to work with. They're all so friendly. They looked after us when we were out, like royalty when we were out there last time.
Yeah.
There's nothing that they won't sort of do for you. So yeah, I think that again is why a lot of people like working with Koreans.
I've lived in the UK for too long.
But do you know what? It's the little things. It's like if I was, let's say, mixing a Korean record, I would send it to them. They would come back and say, "Oh, thank you so much for mixing this and taking the time to do it." And I love those niceties, and it's quite often missing in sort of more Western cultures.
Yeah.
It's just a bit more direct.
People take it for
But
granted.
I love the niceties. It makes our job, just a happier place and a better place to work in.
Makes you feel valued.
You said make you feel valued, which
Totally.
I think is something that, the first thing that you get when you first tell someone that you've just started a job in music is get a real job. It's the most unvalued perspective in this country. Like, people just think it's not a real job unless they know who you are.
Yeah.
Because you've, made millions. So
you end up having 7 different jobs under the same banner just to overcompensate.
Exactly. So just feeling valued as a songwriter means so much.
It's an important point, because I think a lot of people feel apologetic for being an artist,
Yeah.
particularly within the business circle. So, and I do think that we produce work that people listen to in their darkest moments and in their lightest moments. And particularly during COVID, how would people have survived without, film, TV, music, books,
art, yeah.
etc. And I, if anything, it showed the value of art and why it means so much to people, which is why I'm really keen to advocate and say, look, this matters. We need to protect this, particularly on the global stage, because if we don't, we lose what it means to be human.
Good point.
Very well put.
Yeah.
That's my end quote of the day.